So welcome everyone to this EPP Group talk on trade in the European Parliament here in Strasbourg. We are talking about trade with two members of the EPP Group on the International Trade Committee. Anna Michel Asimakopoulou from Greece. You are vice chair of the International Trade Committee. And Jörgen Warburn of Sweden. You were also a member of the International Trade Committee and also on the delegation for relations with Mercosur, because we want to talk about that potential trade deal, and on the delegation to China. That's also very interesting. So lots to talk about. EU as a trading powerhouse. That's how we exist. That is how our economy is so heavily dependent on international trade. And we're aiming at more trade deals coming up with the US, with Latin America, with Asia, with Australia. We want to talk about as much of that as we can. That's how we stay competitive. That's how we create more jobs. But we also want to talk about trade defense as well. A couple of figures here. The European Commission says that EU's exports in 2021 were 7.2 billion euros higher, thanks to the removal of several trade barriers. And on the other hand, though, we had a trade deficit last year, the biggest in at least 20 years. And how do we fix that? A lot of that was, of course, because of higher energy prices. How can we deal with that? How can we deal with also the critical raw materials gap that we have here in Europe? Well, trade deals have to do with it. Let's talk about a bit of the yin and yang. First of all, about the benefits of more trade deals for the EU, for jobs. South Korea, for example, Anna Michel, is touted as an example of a successful trade deal that brought us. It was a win-win for both countries, wasn't it?
I think we have to remember that 38 million jobs rely on trade in the European Union. That's 1 in 5. So that's a lot. And also, 94% of the EU companies exporting are SMEs. I don't need to explain to anybody.
Small,
this is the back. Yeah, this is the backbone of our economy.
Right.
Trade is, let's say, the bread and butter of our existence. Yes. Mm-hmm. I would personally, and I think I'm in good company today with my colleague, Mr. Warburn, we're in favor of doing as many deals as possible.
I think one important thing is critical raw materials, right?
Critical raw materials is important because I'm not sure people understand that this digital and green transition
to make our batteries,
to make wind turbines, our cell phones, everything needs critical raw materials. Lithium is one of them for batteries, for example. So we actually rely very, very heavily on basically one source for critical raw materials, and that's China.
Yeah.
But to give you an understanding of how trade can help, the EU imports, I think it's 24% of our critical raw materials from so-called preferential trade partners, so partners we have special deals with.
Right.
But if we do this deal with Australia that we're pushing for, that'll be 46% just with one trade deal.
Wow.
Chile will help in that direction, and a host of other.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about then segueing into Mercosur, because is Chile part of the Mercosur potential agreement? It is not. That's something else. But anyway, let's talk about Mercosur, because that's very much your sandbox, Jörgen. How likely can we see a Mercosur agreement after 20 years of talks during this Swedish presidency, rotating presidency of the EU? This first half of the year?
So first of all, to the viewers, the Mercosur is Brazil, it's Argentina, it's Uruguay and Paraguay. Okay. So it's the 4 countries. That's representing a market of 260 million consumers. And on the European Union side, approximately 450. Yeah. So if we finally succeed on concluding this free trade agreement, as you said it, we have been negotiating for 20 plus years, then that would be the biggest free trade agreements with any partners. This, of course, is very important for creating jobs, for increasing our prosperity. Will it happen within this legislative term? I would say that is a stretch. we are currently in a negotiation situation once again. The stars seems to be aligned at the moment, with some elections having taken place in Europe and some on the Mercosur side. So there is appetite for moving this forward at the moment.
And Brazil seems to be a bit more cooperative at the moment, right?
Yes.
And
I think the European Parliament has more appetite for passing a Mercosur trade deal as well, I would say. It was more problematic during the Bolsonaro years when he was president. And there is a lot of other situations connecting to this as well. Of course, we have climate issues when it comes to the Mercosur treaty. And we are trying to sort them out now through a unilateral, through a regulation here on the EU side.
Climate issues, do you mean
with the deforestation regulation.
In Brazil,
so no product that comes from any kind of deforestation should be able to be placed on the European market.
Right.
That means that we kind of have sorted that question out of the issue when it comes to Mercosur, which has been one of the criticizing parts.
Okay, what about, though, there are concerns from French farmers that they might be crushed by imports from Mercosur. How do we deal with that?
Well, I think if we go back to other free trade agreements that we have concluded, there have always been a lot of tension from farmers because they have viewed it as a negative from their point of view. But if you scrutinize them afterwards, you actually realize that for the farming sector, it's been beneficial.
Okay.
Because, of course, the competition will increase, but this treaty will also, these free trade agreements will also mean that French and European farmers get access to the 260 million people on the South American side, and they can export and increase their export as well. So it has been proven that even though we've had a lot of reaction, that the free trade agreements actually is beneficial for the farmers as well.
I think another indication that their Mercosur might be having the stars aligned is that Olaf Scholz, the German chancellor, would like to see rapid progress on this agreement. So I think that's an important indication.
Absolutely, right? It is as well. And I think actually there would be a majority during this legislative term, but that means that we have to finalize the last parts that we are negotiating now.
Yeah.
And we have to speed up the process to make sure that this parliament can vote on it. Because you never know what will happen after the election. How will the composition of the parliament be, and what will be the appetite for free trade agreements after the election?
That might be kind of a reason for others to do a deal with the European Union when they know who's there, right? So there's that unpredictability after 2019, or 2024.
2024. And I think also there is, there are some, on the Mercosur side, there are now, they have issues saying that, okay, you have to speed up this from the European side, European Union side, because otherwise, I mean, they argue that otherwise we might tend to trade with other partners more, and they are mentioning China as one example.
Right.
And once again, to reduce the economic power of China, we can do free trade agreements with other parties, like the Mercosur. And that would also solve what Anna Michel just mentioned when it comes to the critical raw materials, because we can source that from the Mercosur countries as well.
Right.
So this is a truly win-win situation, both for EU citizens as well as for the South American citizens.
Right. I guess, we've been talking about how free trade can be win-win, but there are also things that we need to work into the agreements or into how we trade to make sure that we're getting a fair deal for our farmers, for our companies, for our consumers, for instance. And there's one aspect is the anti-coercion instrument to ensure that we're able to trade freely with certain countries. That is something that I think there's been agreement between the Parliament and the European Council, that's the heads of state, on this. Can you tell us about that?
Let me just try and give you like a sense of, our party, the European People's Party, has always been pro-free trade and pro-trade agreements. When I first started in this term, and this is my first term, the discussion in the International Trade Committee was, okay, we're a powerhouse, a trade powerhouse. We have all these agreements. But we need to make sure we protect our jobs. We need to make sure we protect our farmers. We need to make sure that the partners we're trading with respect our value set. So in our trade agreements, we want to have things about labor provisions.
Right.
We want provisions about gender equality.
And environment.
We want provisions about environment.
Yeah.
Okay, that was the discussion. And then COVID happened. And all of a sudden we realized, oh my God, we don't have masks. And oh my God, we need, we need medicine.
Yeah.
And then Russia invaded Ukraine and we were like, oh my God, we're being held hostage. And then a bunch of things happened that showed that trade is now being weaponized.
Yeah.
And then we realized, oh, we need critical raw materials and we're getting them all from China, And what are we going to do about that? So this has now shifted and we're like, okay, well, maybe we should look at trade in a different light. And there's the offense part of this, which is what Jörgen is just talking about, which is let's do deals, let's do Mercosur, let's open up. And then there's the defense, which is like, let's not be held hostage.
Yeah.
And that's the anti-coercion instrument. That's like, when China says to Lithuania, if you open an office for Taiwan, we're going to stop trading with you.
Right.
Oops, there's a problem. And the European Union has to use its power mostly as a deterrent, okay? Because the point is not to engage in trade wars. The point is to say, oh, wait a second.
Right.
We're not going to put up with this.
Right.
And that's the anti-coercion.
Okay, and how does this work? What I'm seeing here are the provisions, the teeth in this thing.
Yes.
Include increased customs duties, import or export licenses,
Sure.
restrictions in the field of services or public procurement.
Sure.
Those are the key ones, right?
Yeah. I mean, but it's pretty much it's a bazooka.
Okay.
It's not a little
that you hope not to use.
That you hope not to use.
Yeah.
But if you want something to be a deterrent, then you make it a bazooka, and that way, nobody messes with you, and that's the point.
Right.
The big point of bone of contention over this was who makes the decision when you pull the trigger or when you use this. And of course, the Commission wanted to do it. Of course, the Parliament wants to have its say. And of course, the Council, which are the heads of state, are like, wait a second, now this is serious stuff.
Yeah.
We want to have a say. So we have found a balance which says, okay, the decision is going to be taken by the heads of state, but with very, very clear rules and reasons, and then the Commission is going to implement right away within set.
So are you talking about co-decision on this? No, not quite. Okay. No. All right. But there are provisions that they would have to observe if there were such abuses by another trading partner. Can we talk any more about trade and investment relations with Taiwan? I think we already
I led a delegation of INTA to Taiwan.
Yeah.
It was a really interesting experience, not just because of the trade aspects of things. I mean, obviously, Taiwan is a very important trading partner because of the microchips, exactly. And that's, part of their national defense strategy because everybody needs them for microchips. But for them, it was also very symbolic that, the European Union was there because they have their issues with China.
Yep.
And, they took this as a supportive measure. And the European Parliament has taken a pretty clear position that we're in favor of a bilateral investment agreement, of something more closely related to Taiwan.
Okay.
I'm not sure if that's going to materialize or not, but certainly the Parliament is calling for it, if not just for trade reasons, also for political and symbolic reasons. But Taiwan worries all of us now, I think.
Yeah. Okay.
For many reasons, geopolitical and trade-wise.
Okay.
And there's European companies that have interests in Taiwan too. I mean, wind turbines. The Dutch are in Taiwan. They're having problems. So it's not an easy trading relationship, but it's a very highly symbolic trading relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Jörgen, can I touch on EU-UK? And there's an EU-UK trade deal with the Asia Pacific that has just been reached. How does that impact our relations with the UK? Do we now see the UK as a competitor in that region because of that trade deal?
I think we should view the UK as a partner. And we, mean, this is in relationship to China as well. We must see that we cooperate a lot with the UK. We've had our issues with the UK since Brexit, of course.
Yeah.
Hopefully we can see that they are left behind. Remember that UK is one of our biggest trading partners as
indeed.
well.
Yeah,
so
not to forget.
we of course we have to have close partnerships with them, and I think we should increase our trade and cooperation with the UK in a number of issues. We also need, when it comes to China, an autocracy which intervenes in the market, not at all as the European and the UK system or the US system, more market-based and open and rules-based system. China is a different animal when it comes to this. So we have to have a lot of partners to make sure that we decreases the economic powers of China, because we do not know what they will use that power to.
Right.
And therefore also we have to have free trade agreements with Australia, New Zealand.
Yeah.
We are having started discussions with India. I think that will be extremely important in the future. I cannot see that we will conclude that in the short
That'll
time
take
frame.
a while. Yeah.
But eventually, if we end up with a free trade agreement with India, that would be very, very, very important for European unions.
Okay.
And for the entire area.
Can I raise another issue on trade defenses, and that is what's working its way through the Parliament this week, is the carbon border adjustment mechanism. In other words, some kind of a tariff on companies that import things that do not conform to our environmental and carbon emission regulations. What do you think about that, Anna Michelle? Is that not a form of protectionism that some might say?
You know, there's a fine line between protection and protectionism. So in the EPP, I think our position on this and the comments we've made, because we want to make sure it conforms to international law, we want to make sure that it doesn't hurt our exports, we want to make sure, you know, it doesn't hurt our industry instead of it helps us ultimately. I think we're finding
it's a level playing field.
Sure. Right. I think we're finding that balance at the moment. But you know, if I were to say something about CBAM, it's complicated. You know, it's not a black and white thing. So.
Right. Oh yeah.
Could I add, because
Sure.
I think from the Parliament side we have been very clear on the position that it has to comply with WTO rules, the World Trade Organization rules.
Okay.
Meaning that it cannot be protectionists. So this means that it is not there to protect European businesses. We like competition. We like our consumers to have choices from, of course, European business. I would like to have a lot of competitiveness when it comes to European businesses. But I welcome also that other countries could sell their products to our consumers. If we have very strong rules when it comes to climate issues to make sure that we meet the challenge of the climate, that will cost our European businesses more money.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if the other countries do not have the same rules, then we apply this tariff.
But is there a danger that could be challenged in the World Trade Organization?
I would say so. I would say there is a danger. But Parliament has asked for that. It should absolutely be WTO compatible. If it is, well, it first has to be challenged, and you have to go through the dispute settlement system to make sure that it is or not. Okay. But the Commission says that this comply.
Okay, good.
But I've understood that other member states of the WTO, they are more hesitant to that. So let's see in the future. I hope it is. We have to meet the climate challenge, and hopefully this is one of the ways. And maybe it will spur interest from other economic trading partners to change their climate policies as well in a way that we actually solve the climate issue.
It shows leadership. Let's try to wrap this up with what's next, especially between now and July during the Swedish presidency. What do you hope for to see in terms of trade deals?
Well, I think the realistic trade deal that we could finalize is the New Zealand trade deal. Yeah.
And what concretely, why is that important to us in terms of sectors?
Well, it is important for a number of reasons. It is to increase our market. It is, once again, the area, New Zealand, Australia, in the China thinking is important, and it is important to increase the possibility and facilitates for businesses, European businesses, to do business in New Zealand as well.
Yeah.
There is a strong climate chapter here as well.
Good.
So from that point of view, it is important. Then, of course, New Zealand isn't one of our biggest market, but still it is an important trading partner, and we should make sure that we can make it as easy as possible to trade from both point of views.
Okay, and I don't hear you saying Mercosur. You said, but you hope.
Well, I mean, between now and end of June.
End of June.
I mean, I don't see. Maybe they will conclude the negotiations, but we will not be able to ratify it in the parliament or say yes or no, because there is legal scrubbing, there is translation, it takes time.
Yeah.
Maybe before the end of this legislative period, but then that is, we have to push it from the parliament so that the commission really fast track the Mercosur, then it could be done.
Okay, I'd say that's worth a tweet with a hashtag.
Yeah.
Anna Michelle,
well, I'd like to see,
what's next? Yeah.
Even though I agree with, and I'd like to be optimistic and say maybe by the end of the term we can get Chile done. But I mean, really, if we can't do a deal with New Zealand, I mean, in Australia, who can we do a deal with? I mean, these are like-minded partners completely.
Right.
But I'd like to make one last comment about the U.S. relationship, because that's been sort of troubled with the IRA, with the Inflation Reduction Act lately.
Yeah.
But
the green subsidies.
Yes,
that they
the green subsidies, exactly.
Which we have too here.
Which we have too. Yes. But they made a deal with Japan recently on critical raw materials, and I'm very hopeful that after President von der Leyen's recent visit and her discussion with Joe Biden, nobody really knows exactly the contours of this, but there's a sense, and my most recent visit to Washington confirmed that we could maybe work out some sort of critical raw materials deal, which, I'd be in favor for a much bigger deal. This is our biggest trading partner, our biggest relationship, but I understand there's not a big amount of appetite for that right now. So I'd be very happy to see that as a very positive sign in our relationship.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
And Michelle, Jörgen, thank you so much, and thanks to all for joining us on this discussion on international trade. Keep in mind at EPP Group and eppgroup.eu for further information on that and other issues. My name is Chris Burns. See you next time.